Welcome to This Week in Aviation, brought to you by AviatorDB. I'm Mark Preston. Caracas closes its main international airport after the deadliest earthquake to strike Venezuela in more than a century. A NetJets Citation Latitude goes down on a Texas highway during an emergency landing. An Indian Air Force Antonov AN-32 veers off the runway and burns in Assam, killing 5. And European regulators order emergency Wing-Spar inspections on a small group of A380s flown by Emirates and Qantas. Here are this week's stories. We begin in Venezuela. Venezuela's main international airport in Caracas is closed tonight, shut down after the country's strongest earthquake in roughly 125 years. The magnitude 7.5 quake struck on Wednesday, near the capital. At least 188 people have been reported dead. Caracas's principal airport sustained significant structural damage, and following damage assessments, authorities halted all aviation operations in and out of the city. The closure has cut off the capital's air links at the very moment the country needs them most. That loss ripples well beyond Venezuela. Caracas is a connecting point for international and regional traffic across northern South America and the Caribbean, and with it, offline, airline networks across the region face sudden rerouting and cancellation. Carriers serving the capital must now decide whether to suspend service entirely or seek alternate fields. The closure also complicates the humanitarian response. Emergency and relief flights face access and coordination challenges while the main airport remains shut, leaving aid groups and evacuation efforts to work around damaged infrastructure rather than through it. For now, there is no published timeline for reopening. Whether the facility can be repaired quickly or requires more extensive rebuilding will depend on the structural assessment still underway, and the cost and duration of that recovery remain unknown. The event is a stark reminder of how exposed aviation infrastructure can be to natural disaster and how fast the sudden loss of a single hub can reshape an entire region's air transport. From a closed airport, we turn to a fatal accident on a Texas highway. A NetJets Cessna 680. A Citation Latitude crashed on a highway short of Laredo International Airport on Tuesday, according to industry outlets. The aircraft, registered November 523 QS, was flying from San Jose del Cabo, Mexico, bound for Austin when it diverted to Laredo because of in-flight problems. During the attempted emergency landing, the jet came down on a highway short of the airport. 1 passenger was killed and 5 other occupants were injured. The aircraft struck a concrete barrier and lampposts. The Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board have both opened investigations. Among the questions investigators face are the approach path the crew flew and the decisions made as the flight diverted and lost the option of a clean runway. What forced the diversion and what conditions confronted the crew in those final minutes have not yet been established. The accident lands hard because of who operated the aircraft. NetJets is the leading name in fractional ownership, a model built around the promise of airline-grade safety for private travelers. A first fatality in that fleet raises questions about risk management at a major operator, and it puts a spotlight on emergency decision-making, the trade-off between attempting a landing on a public road and pressing toward an airport that may be out of reach. The aircraft's collision with roadside structures underscores a further hazard. Business jets operating close to highways and populated areas have little margin when an emergency unfolds. The NTSB's preliminary findings will be closely watched, both for what they say about this flight and for any wider implications for fractional and business aviation oversight. Now to India, and a fatal military transport accident. 5 Indian Air Force personnel were killed when an Antonov AN-32 transport veered off the runway and caught fire at Jorhat Roria Airport in Assam. The aircraft, an AN-32RE registered KA-2678, departed the runway during landing and burst into flames. 5 service members died in the post-landing fire. The co-pilot survived but remains in serious condition. The aircraft belonged to 43 Squadron, a frontline transport unit operating in the region. The Indian Air Force has constituted a court of inquiry to determine what happened. That investigation will examine the aircraft's condition, the actions of the crew, and the runway environment at the time of the accident. No cause has been established. The AN-32 has been a workhorse of the Indian Air Force for decades, a Soviet-era transport central to moving troops and supplies across the country's difficult terrain. Its long service has come with a record of incidents over the years, and accidents like this one renew the debate over managing aging legacy fleets and the safety margins they leave crews. The dynamics here are familiar to accident investigators. A runway excursion, followed by fire. The survival of the co-pilot, against the loss of 5 colleagues, points to the narrow and often unpredictable factors that decide who walks away from a post-impact blaze. Remote and regional bases such as Jorhat add their own pressures to the equation. The Court of Inquiry's findings will shape not only the response to this crash, but the broader conversation about modernizing India's transport fleet. Finally tonight, an emergency order from European regulators concerning the world's largest passenger jet. European regulators have ordered emergency inspections of the Airbus A380 after the discovery of structural cracks in the aircraft's wing. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency published Emergency Airworthiness Directive 2026-0119-E this week, mandating urgent inspections of the A380's wing mid-spars. The order is not a fleet-wide grounding. It targets 16 specific aircraft, 15 operated by Emirates and 1 by Qantas, rather than the entire global A380 fleet. The distinction matters. An emergency directive is reserved for conditions regulators judge serious enough to require immediate action, but here the scope is narrow and aimed at a defined set of airframes. Still, complying with urgent inspections could temporarily sideline specific, high-capacity aircraft on key long-haul routes, and both Emirates and Qantas will need to reshuffle their fleets to cover any jet pulled from service. The underlying issue is structural cracking in the mid-spar, a load-bearing element of the wing. Finding fatigue cracks of this kind raises questions about aging and inspection intervals on very large jets. The A380 is among the highest capacity aircraft ever built, and lessons drawn from its structure may carry over to other high-cycle long-haul fleets as they accumulate years in service. For now, the affected carriers must respond quickly to satisfy the directive while managing the schedule disruption it brings. There is also the matter of public confidence. Targeted structural findings on a flagship aircraft can unsettle passengers, even when regulators stress that the action is precautionary and limited in scope. How fast the inspections clear these 16 airframes will determine whether the disruption stays contained. Also in aviation news this week, the Federal Aviation Administration has permanently banned simultaneous parallel landings at San Francisco International Airport. The move cuts the airport's peak arrival capacity by roughly a third, from about 54 aircraft per hour to 36. The decision follows years of concern about closely spaced parallel approaches and near-miss risk at the airport. For airlines serving San Francisco, the consequences are immediate: increased delays, more schedule padding, and the prospect of knock-on disruption rippling through national networks. It marks a regulatory shift toward more conservative runway configuration rules at complex airports. The International Air Transport Association is warning that engine maintenance bottlenecks have grounded hundreds of jets worldwide. By the group's count, roughly 648 aircraft powered by geared turbofan engines are sitting idle, the bulk of them A320neo family jets fitted with Pratt & Whitney engines. The trade body puts the supply chain cost at an estimated $11 billion. CFM's LEAP engines also feature in the broader parts and capacity crunch. IATA is calling for coordinated action among engine makers, maintenance providers, and regulators to stabilize reliability. The National Transportation Safety Board has released its findings on a fatal UPS MD-11 crash, citing fatigue cracking in an engine pylon bearing assembly as a key factor. The report raises concerns about the adequacy of Boeing's earlier safety analyses for the affected structures. It puts the MD-11's design and aging fleet status under renewed scrutiny in cargo operations. Investigators say the findings may inform future inspection regimens and airworthiness directives on similar components, and the case underscores the interplay between manufacturer analysis, operator maintenance, and regulatory oversight. The FAA has opened a nationwide survey on ramp worker safety, tied to mandates in the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024. The review targets engine ingestion zones, jet blast, and foreign object debris. Industry stakeholders have until July 3, 2026, to submit feedback, with results expected to shape future guidance, training, and possibly new regulatory requirements for ground operations. The push comes as recent ramp incidents draw fresh attention to one of aviation's least visible but most hazardous environments. One such incident played out at Memphis this week. A Southwest Airlines 737 was taken out of service after a ramp vehicle struck the aircraft and became wedged beneath its fuselage during boarding. No injuries were reported among passengers or ground staff. A replacement aircraft was dispatched to operate the affected flight. Minor as it was, the event is a direct illustration of the ground handling collision risk that builds during congested boarding. At Antalya, a Turkish Airlines 777-300ER struck a radar antenna mast while taxiing, collapsing the structure onto the aircraft's fuselage. All 267 passengers were evacuated, with one minor injury reported. The event appears in global safety databases as a significant ground collision involving a wide-body jet. Investigators are expected to focus on taxi route design, signage, and crew situational awareness. The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating a near miss at Boston Logan involving intersecting runways. A Delta flight executed a go-around to avoid an American Airlines departure crossing its path, with preliminary accounts suggesting the two aircraft may have come within roughly 300 feet of each other. Intersecting runway operations remain a long-standing safety concern at busy hubs, and the event feeds into wider questions about approach spacing, controller workload, and pilot vigilance. And Ryanair has paired strong results with a warning. The carrier posted a 40% jump in full-year net profit, reaching 2.26 billion euros, but at the same time issued a profit warning tied to Boeing delivery delays. It has trimmed its fiscal 2026 passenger target to about 206 million, citing constrained fleet growth. The case shows how aircraft supply problems can cap growth even for Europe's largest low-cost carrier. That's This Week in Aviation. For the latest aviation news, visit aviatordb.com. I'm Mark Preston. We'll see you next week.